Kia ora koutou, it's me, Terada. Welcome to another one of our HR chats with me, Terada. So we chat all things HR and HR related. Today, we are talking to Tim Jones. Tim Jones is the Grow Good CEO, also the founder of Grow Good and a bee consultant. He is New Zealand's first qualified bee consultant, having successfully completed the training program run by B Lab ANZ. And to date, he's helped more than 80 companies from around the world successfully navigate the B Corp Impact Assessment, and is working with new businesses every month to take them through the process. He also holds a certificate in impact management, measurement and management for the SDGs from Duke University, is industry expert and co-teacher of the University of Canterbury MBA program, Creating Impact-Led Enterprises. Hello, Tim.
Hello. That sounds like I'm quite busy.
Yeah, like I was reading through that and thinking, I'm really underachieving. I'm just not doing enough with my life. Hey, look, welcome aboard. I know that there will be people here listening for whom some of what we have just described is going to be new to them. Yep. I have hosted no shortage of awards and things and mentioned businesses with B Corp certification. And to be honest, I'm not sure I totally understand what it is. And fortunately, you were going to explain that to us. So for people who haven't heard about B Corp certification, let's go. What is it?
Today's the day you find out. So B Corporation is a third-party independent verification of a company's social and environmental performance. So it's a initial self-assessment that a company will undertake through an online platform, which any company can go and do. It's completely free to go and have a go at the assessment. So if you just Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever, or Ecosia, your preferred platform, B Impact Assessment, that'll come up. You will find a link to that and you can have a go at it. And basically, the assessment looks at your performance as a company across your governance, your workers, your community impact, your environmental impact, and then what do you actually do? Like, what is your product and how do you sort of sell that to your customers? So it's kind of, in my opinion, it is the world's premier independent. It's independent because you go through an audit process if you want to go and get certified, which you then have to pay for. So it's independent verification of claims that you might be making as a company. It's globally recognized and it's social and environmental impact. So that's why I think it's a pretty cool system.
That's pretty cool. So what is there a rigmarole? You know, the free assessment. So anyone sitting there thinking, oh gosh, actually, I wonder kind of how we're doing.
Yep.
You can go in and for free fill out a self-assessment form and get a sense of where you fit without maybe necessarily going on and getting certified.
Yep, 100%. So I can't remember the numbers, but it's like in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of companies that have taken the assessment but haven't gone on to certify. Globally, we're creeping up to 6,000 B Corps globally. I think the other day, I'm pretty sure we're at 79 yesterday. Maybe we're 80 today in New Zealand. So it's kind of not massive numbers globally. I think if you work it out, it's about 0.01 or 2% of companies globally are B Corp. But the rate of growth in the movement is just, phenomenal. So a lot of companies will go and, exactly that. Go and have a snapshot, use it as a way to get, use a globally recognized framework to see where are we at. Yeah, and you can do that totally for free.
Well, I always love a free self-assessment.
Yeah, why not?
I've done quite a few recently, including how to keep my headphones in. Hey, where did it come from? The sort of the basis of the idea, the genesis of it all.
It has got, I think, a really cool sort of I call it the creation myth story of B Corp. So one of the co-founders of B Corp was a guy called J. Cohen Gilbert, and he used to be the co-founder and CEO of a company called And1. And And1 was one of the world's largest basketball apparel companies back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think it was the #1 basketball apparel company in New Zealand. And globally, they were kind of sparring with Nike on shoe sales as to who would be #1. And it's the moment that I think a lot of people, particularly a lot of senior executives, have in companies. I call it the existential wet fish to the face moment, that kind of like Monty Python sketch when you get, the big fish across the face. His sister was trapped in one of the Twin Towers in New York on September the 11th. Luckily, she was one of the survivors. She got out. And then about a week or two later, one of his close friends at And1 passed away. And so he had this kind of moment, this existential wet fish to go, well, what am I doing? Like we're chasing Nike, but so what? And they started to introduce some of the the principles of what would make a B Corp now into the business at that time. So if anyone's worked in the US or worked for a US based company, you'll know that your colleagues in the US don't get things like leave. They don't get parental leave. They don't have a healthcare system. There's a lot of stuff that, we take for granted from an HR perspective in New Zealand. And he started to do some different things. So they have an option for employee ownership in the company. They started doing like the yoga and health days in the company before it was kind of trendy at Google. They created their own charity where they were working in the local communities in Philadelphia where they were based to do outreach programs to at-risk youth. They looked at their supply chain and started making sure that we were paying good wages in their supply chain. And the business went from strength to strength. Anyway, fast forward to 2005, Jay wants to exit the business. They take the business to Wall Street. And the first thing that the investment guys do is look at the numbers and go, you've got a great brand, great business, but your numbers are terrible. So they stripped out all the good stuff, sold the business. And then after that, he got together with, they've got great names. The CFO of ANZ is a guy called Bart Houlihan, and one of the Wall Street bankers, Andrew Cassoy. And the three of them felt, look, actually, we just sold out, and that felt pretty bad. So the three of them got together and they thought about creating a new business together. And they looked at all sorts of things from like pizza companies and various things. And they liked drinking a couple of whiskeys. And I think over a couple of whiskeys, they thought, maybe we could start one business. But then maybe a couple of glasses turned into a bottle. And they thought, well, why don't we create a movement of businesses that aim to be the best for the world rather than just chasing shareholder primacy. So that was the creation myth story. And so that was 2005, 2006. And they basically went to their friends and said, hey, look, we're going to create this certification framework. Does anyone want to have a go? And about 2006, 07, they got the first 10 B Corps in the US.
Isn't it just so sort of typical that, again, it goes to that bottom line. It doesn't matter what the business is doing, that obsession with the kind of, profit, that late stage capitalism scenario.
Yeah.
So from that, people are listening to this and thinking, hey, this sounds pretty great. We'll get on. We'll do the self-assessment. When people go through that self-assessment, is there anywhere that a majority of people tend to sort of trip up, where there's a part of it that tends to be a little weaker than the others, or is it sort of spread across the various assessments? So if they're looking to go on and get certified, where's the kind of pinch point more often than not? So
it's worth noting that there is no one assessment. There's about 70 different assessments that you could take. And that's based on, so if you're in the agricultural sector versus the manufacturing sector versus a wholesale retailer versus a service business, you're going to have different, if you're growing stuff, there's going to be questions on pesticide use and land use. Whereas, running a small service-based company, I don't really have much impact directly on the land. So there's not one assessment. Broadly, Kiwi companies generally, and this is where I think for HR people in New Zealand, we generally score really well on workers because we tend to look after our employees really well in New Zealand. We have some good sort of favourable trade wins, with legislation, state, mandated healthcare, pensions, what have you. But beyond that, particularly medium to large companies, they typically are offering quite a lot of extra benefits to staff in general. The one area in general where most Kiwi companies in particular are really struggling is supply chain. It's kind of like, we buy some stuff from a guy called Dave in Auckland, but I don't know where Dave gets his stuff from. And it's like, you might want to have a look into that, because I'm sure Dave's a great guy, or Sally, or, whoever you're buying it from. I'm sure they're great, but you might just want to have a look into that, because that's going to be your risk. But that's more for sort of product-based companies. Service-based companies, it can typically be more around shoring up kind of community impact, community involvement. Those would be the two main ones.
Yeah, look at it. Just incidentally, one of the great things around a lot of these certification programs now, and product traceability and all of that actually the whole lift of businesses that float that kind of entire supply chain analysis all the way back through. So, what a great world we're living in. So I've gone through it. I've had a look at it, and I thought, what, actually, I think I'm doing pretty well. I think it'd be good for my business to get certified.
Yep.
I'm going to fill out the form, and someone's going to audit me. What is that process? What's the certification process with getting the stamp on the page?
Yep. So most people, will give the assessment a go. So you need to score a minimum of 80 out of 200 on the self-assessment. And a lot of people kind of go, well, 80, that's not even half marks. How hard is this thing? The median score on first attempt for all companies is 50 out of 200. So to even be getting 80, you're sort of significantly outperforming the market or your peers or competitors. So you need to get the minimum of 80. And to do that, you basically are either doing pretty good across all 5 sections, or you're doing exceptionally well in 2 and kind of okay on the other 3. And so once you're over that 80 mark, you click submit. It's a real shame like that. I think they should have like a really big red button on the middle of the page that you get to click, but you got to find this little submit button on one of the pages. You click submit. You then currently sit in a queue for potentially quite a few months. And that's because there's so much demand for B Corp globally that their audit team just can't keep up with demand currently, which is it's a better problem to be having. So depending on
to be fair, a very modern problem. There are no shortage of us now. You know, waiting is the new normal.
yeah. Just get used to. Oh, I'm British, so I love a good queue.
You love it. Even a metaphorical online queue. You are at home.
I'm all over it. Yeah, because I'll get a cup of tea. Fantastic. Yeah. So you'll sit in a queue for a little while. That will depend on the size, scale, and complexity of the organization. Smaller companies will get through more quickly because they're just smaller and there's less to kind of audit. Whereas, we helped Stuff. It took them about a year to even get to the audit position because they're bigger and more complex. And it just takes the auditors kind of do a little bit of pre-work on your company to work out, okay, well, what am I actually auditing? So for a small company like mine, it's pretty easy to go through the audit. So once you're called for audit, typically that looks like a 90-minute to 2-hour Zoom call or your preferred equivalent. And in that audit, it's a mixture of a verbal audit. So they might say, hey, Terada, I hear you say that you do X, Y, Z. Can you just give me an example of how you've done that recently and what was the outcome? And so you'll provide a verbal explanation and they'll go, yep, great, I'm happy with that, tick. Other questions, they'll say, hey, look, so you're claiming here that you've sent 75% plus of your workforce on some training programs. Could you tell me what those training programs were? Okay, now what I want to see is invoices, to prove that you sent them on to that conference. So it's a mixture of verbal audit, digital physical audit. And that process, let's say 2-hour call, you'll go away, there'll be some homework. The thing to bear in mind the two things to bear in mind, that the whole process is a positive screening tool. So you get rewarded for the good that you're doing. You don't get points taken off you for what you're not doing or for doing bad. And the auditors in general, they're very collegial. They want you to be a B Corp. They're not sitting here going, no, that's wrong. And they're not telling you sort of how you could do it better. They're pretty good at going, look, you're almost there. But if you just go and create this document, then I can give you those points. So you go through that process. After that verification call, there's normally a bit of homework you have to go away and do, find some proof, documentation. Once you've uploaded all of that, they'll tick it all off, mark it all off as verified. You pay your certification fee and boom, you get to put your little B Corp certificates, logos all over the show.
Great. And for an organization that is thinking about that, what's the I guess the benefit of that, of actually getting certified?
Yep.
I guess you not only get a really good snapshot of where you are, and self-assessment is not necessarily ever a bad thing.
Yep.
It's good to know. What are any other kind of benefits?
Yep. Totally. I mean, what we're seeing with the clients that we work with, there's 4. If every organization has 4 groups of humans that they need, and they are customers, employees, supply chain, and investors. And basically one or all of those groups are looking at your company in the middle, starting to ask the question internally, maybe at least, if not actually sending your company emails, like, what are you doing? What's your ESG plan? There was a great, it was an email, I think it was like 2019, a lady wrote a letter to, I don't know whether I can name the large company, but it was a large New Zealand retailer, and she sent them an email saying, hey, I'd like to know a bit more about your supply chain. And they came back and said, we're sorry, madam, but that information is classified. Well, in my head now, I'm now just imagining 5-year-old children in Southeast Asia making your stuff. So I think there's more and more interest from those groups of people, like I say, who are looking at your business, who want to know what you're doing, either because they're having pressure put on them, or increasingly concerned citizenry. I think more and more people, particularly I think for companies in the service sector, or your employees want to know that they're doing something meaningful. And I think this is the real link with HR, is that there are other ESG frameworks that you can do. And typically what happens is the sustainability manager will go and do that in isolation on their own, and they'll pop up and say, hey, we've got this new certification. The key with B Corp is actually to bring your entire company on the journey and let everyone understand what good you're currently doing, but let them bring them full selves into work and provide ideas. And, hey, I had no idea that in manufacturing we did that. I've always wondered why we can't do it this way. And so, having that sharing of the goodness that you're doing I mean, yeah, one example, I was recently in March, I went back to the UK and I caught up with a mate of mine in Covent Garden for lunch. And I was a bit early, so I went for a bit of a walk just round by the tube station there. And within about 3 blocks, I saw 3 retail shops that had a B Corp logo in their window. And I like mystery shopping B Corp shops. I walked in, I was like, oh, so what's this B thing on the window? And they're like, oh, well, yep, we're a certified B Corporation. That means we've been independently verified to be meeting the highest. And I'm like, fantastic. Like, I said, hey, I'm actually a B Corp. I know this stuff, but I just wanted to test. I said, do you tell that to every customer? Like, oh, we're really proud to be a B Corp. And, we think the whole thing's amazing and everything we had to do to get there. Like, you can't buy that level of engagement in retail. In particular, whereas most other stores you walk past and there's someone just on their phone, texting or WhatsApping their mate or whatever. So yeah, definite uplift and potential for marketing. But again, that supply chain stuff, we're definitely seeing pressures coming where the bigger company upstream has become a B Corp, and they're now just looking downstream and going, hey, we want to know what you're doing, because they've just asked us what we're doing with you. So lots of pressures everywhere.
A lot of pressure everywhere. If you were mentioning, the numbers in New Zealand, who are some of the big ones, both here and abroad, that we might have heard of, but we may not necessarily know they're B Corp certified?
Yep. I guess globally, Patagonia, the outdoor company, they're one of the longest standing and highest scoring B Corps. Ben and Jerry's is a B Corp, so the more ice cream you eat, the better the world gets. That's the theory. Locally, Allbirds, we try and claim Allbirds as a Kiwi B Corp, but realistically, they're based in San Fran. So, we'll do our best on that one. Kiwi Bank is a B Corp, Co-op Bank is a B Corp, Kathmandu is a B Corp. Some of the smaller B Corps that you might have heard of, like the Cheer Sisters, they're currently the highest scoring B Corp in New Zealand. Etique, they're possibly my favorite B Corp, number 2. They were B Corp number 2, way back before it was cool. So there's a real diverse range and different industries within New Zealand, because I think we're kind of still, at the forefront of people getting into it. So it's very much driven by people that kind of really want to do this, rather than perhaps, globally, there are some organizations that might have been forced into it a little bit because of market forces. An interesting one, just so regionally, Unilever Australia, New Zealand is now a B Corp. So Unilever globally is not, but their Australia, New Zealand division is. So they're like the biggest one in this region now.
Right. And so, and a part of it, I suppose, is also that it's sort of, I guess, pressure from consumers, but you can also have that pressure from inside to say, hey, look, we're talking HR, times are tough. How do we recruit the people we want? And we're all talking about that kind of, that the purpose, and we've been talking about that for some years now. So actually applying a little bit of pressure from inside to say, hey, we think this is a good thing. And actually people can do that from any level within that. They can actually maybe even go to the HR department and go, you know what, if you haven't heard of this might be quite a good thing. Or HR can go to whoever else is involved.
Yep, 100%. And it's really interesting. Like I call those people the concerned citizen. I'll quite often get, there's a young lady who reached out to me a couple of months ago, and she's like, hey, I think my company should be a B Corp. And we've spent the last couple of months, I've been feeding her the information that she kind of needs. She's then presented it to the CEO. It's an Australia, New Zealand based company. The CEO is over for a board meeting. I'm flying up to Wellington next month to go and present to their board and say, well, this is your opportunity. So we definitely get concerned citizens, but also we're seeing boards say to their CEOs, because we're now getting to this really interesting phase. I can't remember the guy's name, Leon. He was the CEO of Sinlay, which is a B Corp. He is now on the board of Raglan Coconut Company, I think, who are a B Corp. But he's also on some other boards. So we've now got the first kind of group of board people who are moving around. They've been in a couple of B Corps and they're now dropping into non-B Corps. And we're starting to sort of see that coming from a board level as well. But in terms of that purpose piece, B Corp, we're really big on the purpose piece. The risk with B Corp is it's just another environmental certification that you kind of go through the process. You can use it as a tool that is tangible, that lets, it's that classic JFK quote, when he was at NASA, what are you doing here, son? I'm putting a man on the moon. The way you can use the B Corp process to get everyone to understand how what they're doing on a day-to-day basis is having a meaningful contribution to the company. But more broadly, well, what is the meaningful contribution that this company is actually making? And you can use the assessment to really help bring that to life. And like I say, if you can get your lowest paid part-time worker engaged on B Corp, you're going to nail it.
Just wondering, I just sat through an economics conference a couple of weeks ago. There was a presentation on manaho, a new way of looking at Māori business, and within a room here, particularly for a lot of like iwi businesses and things like that. Is that 100%. Something that you specifically might be really good?
Yeah, there's deepening conversations between. So my business is a B Corp. The company that, or the organization that runs the certification framework is called B Lab, and that's a non-profit organization. And there's B Labs all over the world. So our regional hub is in Melbourne, B Lab Australia, New Zealand. B Lab are having, deepening conversations with Te Ao Māori business principals, the leaders of those iwi businesses, business accelerators, and so on and so forth. Because fundamentally, the principles of B Corp, true stakeholder capitalism, thinking long term, the B in B Corp stands for benefit. So what benefit does your company have beyond just making a return to the shareholder? So the underlying principles of Te Ao Māori business and B Corp are, really aligned. It's just taken, us smart people from the Western democratized countries to, it's just taken us 1,000 years to work out that maybe chasing money isn't the smart thing.
Maybe it isn't. Hey, look,
what a crazy idea.
It's a crazy idea, I know, but and probably just a very pertinent and applicable place to finish up the conversation. On a personal level, what's been the best thing about it for you?
Oh man, that's a great question. I mean, I discovered B Corp having had an early midlife crisis post earthquakes here in Christchurch, and then we had our daughter in 2012. I had basically what was called a subconscious awakening. So come to the moment of realization, like Jay did, I had that existential wet fish to the face. I'm like, what are we doing? We're just chasing money. And by doing that, I used to work in the medical device industry, selling hips and knees and spinal instruments and implants. And you get to the realization pretty quickly that the industry actually just cares about making more money. It doesn't really care about patient outcomes. Literally there were patient deaths chasing money over patient outcomes. And you kind of go, well, if the one industry in the world, which should be about making humans better, actually just cares about money, what hope have we got in the industries that actually just care about making money? So I went down a real, sort of rabbit hole, and on that discovered this whole thing about purpose, and then discovered B Corp. And for me, it's been life-changing to realize that, I might be crazy, but, there's now 6,000 other business people that are equally crazy that, like I say, think that maybe just chasing money perhaps doesn't give us best outcomes for us as individuals or companies or the planet. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Tim Jones, congratulations on the resolution of your early midlife crisis and the ongoing work to beat the rush. Beat the rush to make everyone better. Tim Jones, Grow Good CEO, founder, and B consultant. For those of you who are thinking, geez, I've listened all the way to the end of this without immediately going on at the start of the conversation and going to the website. What is the website? Is it?
So if you just search for B Impact Assessment,
get amongst it. Hey, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm going to go and do a self-assessment and then sit around despondent for the rest of the day at my I need to improve. Continuous self-improvement. Tim Jones from Grow Good CEO, founder and B consultant. This has been another one of our wonderful HR chats with me, Radar. If there is a person, a subject, a topic, an area of interest that you think we should have a chat about, please let Tina and the team know at HRNZ. If this is the first of these that you have watched or listened to, please go back through the archives and have a listen to the rest. There are some crackers in there. Until next time, thanks very much. We'll see you later on.